I'll probably just turn off.
That's fine. So if what we're going to do is we're going to answer these in each of the competencies, and we're going to use my strategies and then all the work and knowledge that you did on your end via your studies and analyzing of the competencies and like what that meant and cross-referencing it with your manual that you have. So first and foremost, when you're reading these questions, remember to pay attention to the details. This is a critical reading exam. What does that mean? They're all critical reading exams. It means that they particularly choose the things that they say in the scenarios and in the questions, even in the word choices, even in your answer choices, right? So it's very important to pay attention to the words that they give you, the words they particularly chose to print on the paper. Mindful of the words. You have to go into this exam sort of with a plan of attack, and you have to remind yourself every time you read a new scenario, every time you read a new question, to be mindful of the words that they used in this scenario and in the question and in the answer choices. What words are they using here? Are they telling us a particular age group or grade level? If they are, it might be because they are trying to tell us like either that this is an abnormal progression or behavior, or it's totally normal, or it's advanced. So where are they on the spectrum of normal growth and development of EC through 12? And for the special education teacher, it's not just enough for you to know what's normal. You have to know what's abnormal, like what to look for, what particular things to look for in your special ed students. So mindful of the words, be mindful of the details that they give you, pay attention to the details, get the deets. I don't know if that's how you spell deets, but that means get the details of each scenario. What grade level, like what time in the lesson does this take place? What behavior are we looking for? What is the goal? What special disabilities do they have? Are they English language learners? Did their parents just get divorced? What important words and details did they give me? And then you have to decide what's important. Like, what keywords and phrases do you need to pay attention to, are going to add to you, answering correctly. For this particular competency, much of it is straightforward, but for the ones that, question your ability to adjust instruction, to address the design, to meet the needs of your special, like for those, you have to be extra careful with your analysis of your keywords and phrases, because when this exam uses which one of the following strategies is most appropriate or is the best response, they're able to say that because they gave you more than one appropriate response. They gave you more than one, decent response. One is better than the other based on the details, based on the keywords and phrases you decided as important. So identifying keywords, words and phrases. So anything particular special ed, if they give you details about behaviors that you're seeing or details about the student, or if they say in this class you have 3 students with learning disabilities, that's important. We have students with learning disabilities. We do particular things, especially if you're, in a reading class or in a math class, to help support our students with particular disabilities so that they're able to, achieve success in the academic goals. And actually for special ed, you have all sorts of goals, but specifically, for their learning objectives so that they're able to successfully meet those learning objectives. So we have to provide those supports. You have to be able to sort of detective it out of scenarios and of questions, what is important. And we'll practice that today. So identify keywords and phrases. If they say, any time markers before the lesson begins, that's important. If they're asking about something before a lesson begins, we do particular things before lessons or before units. We do particular things during lessons and units, and we do things after, so and making sure that you pay attention. If they say before, during, after, first, second, what's next, what should come first, what would you follow up with, that you pay attention to that so that you're able to eliminate those answer choices that don't at all follow along with where it is. And that's where you get into the most appropriate strategy business, because they get you with the details. That's how they get you on these exams. It's all in the details. So next, after you have your keywords and phrases, you're going to laser focus your attention to the question. What the heck is it asking? What is the question really, and I'm going to put really in caps for a reason, asking? And I say that because many of the questions, they are like in fancy language, right? It's like testing language, and it's particular to pedagogy, right? It's that pedagogy vernacular. It's specific to our profession of education. And so sometimes we get lost in the fancy language, right? And if we just look at it and put it in layman's terms, sort of translating it, if you will, what is really the question asking me? Putting it in layman's terms, restating it in just normal language, in other words, if you will, what they're asking yourself. And it's not going to apply for these two that were here, but it'll apply later. What is the goal of I was going to say speducator, but the educator, right? What is the goal of the educator in the scenario? Like if it's, Miss Sauceda's ELAR class, and she has, a group of 7 students with varying disabilities, from learning disabilities to, emotional disabilities. And so getting the goal for her. So, well, what does she want to do? She's an English teacher and she has special ed kids. Well, what does she wants to do? She wants to make them speak more in small cooperative learning groups with her peers, because she has them very diversified by, to have varied skill, high with her special ed, with, ELL, with socioeconomic, with the football team, all in there and so she wants to better help her special ed students participate during small group discussion. That's her goal. That means that whatever it is you choose as the best strategy to help her get them to do that, it has to address that goal. The goal is for them to participate. That means they have to feel comfortable talking, right? So making sure that you have, what is the goal for the educator in this scenario? If you can say that to yourself and keep it in mind as you are reading through all the way through the answer choices, not just saying, oh, B's for sure, and not even going to C and D, because that's how they get you. They have writers that will pull your eye to a specific answer choice. So don't do that. Make sure you get every answer choice credence, which means that you're going to weigh it against your logic and your reason and your keywords and phrases and the details and what is the goal for the educator. You're going to take all that into consideration before you can bet yourself $5 that it is not the right answer. And then you can eliminate it. And you'll very easily be left with the correct answer choice if you have mindfully analyze the scenario, question, in answer choices to make sure, because they give you good answer choices, but they're not good for the specific details. They'll give you a good strategy, but it's a good strategy for pre-reading, not during, or not for discussion. So it might be an amazing strategy, but not for this specific details, not for the keywords. So as long as you can be mindful, you'll be successful on the exam. So let's take a look and break these down. Like I said, with some of these, especially on the content specific exam, which yours is like a content specific, even though the state changed that sort of ideology. I'm trying to move us. Oh, wait, I know why I can't move us. Okay. So we have, which of the following behaviors demonstrated by a 2-year-old is the clearest indication that the motor development of that child may be impaired? So I'm going to get my handy dandy marker and we are going to break it down. We're going to do the steps together. We're going to be mindful of the words. Let's reread them again. Okay. Which of the following behaviors, why is it not writing? What the heck? Okay, no, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, let's begin again. All right. Okay, so which of the following behaviors demonstrated by a 2-year-old child is the clearest indicator that the motor development of the child may be impaired? So details, I highlighted some of them, right? Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you want to highlight that went unnoticed here as a keyword and phrase?
No, I think you got them all.
Okay, so what's it really asking? It's the behaviors of a 2-year-old, which is the clearest indicator that the motor development of the kid is impaired, right? That's what is it really asking? What does clearest indicator mean?
How do I put this into? Okay, so I'm going to break it down the way I would break it down, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's okay.
Okay, so it's asking for motor development of the child being impaired. So automatically I know that it has to do with the 2-year-old child that's impaired, and it's asking for like which one of these answers can tell you that from the get-go.
Tell you that which one of these answers shows you that shows you that there is impairment, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for a behavior or an action that shows us that there's some sort of unnormal, not along normal growth and development impairment. So let's take a look at the answer choices. And the goal for the educator, like I said, that sometimes doesn't work when it's content and it's just like sort of you have to know this. But the goal is we're trying to identify which one of these behaviors shows us that there's impairment for a 2-year-old. Normal growth and development for a 2-year-old will not be considered impairment, right? So it has to be something like not normal for a 2-year-old. So let's take a look at it. Difficulty controlling hands and eyes. B, inability to climb stairs with alternating feet. C, frequently falling while running. D, making involuntary hand movements. So we read each of these, we gave them credence. Now let's eliminate them based on us thinking this is based on what we know of what's normal of a 2-year-old. This is not a good indicator or a good characteristic or an example of someone who's a 2-year-old experiencing motor development impairment. So which one of these can you cross out and bet yourself $5 that's not the answer, because 2-year-olds do this all the time?
frequently falling while running.
Absolutely, right? So
Kids are clumsy.
2-year-olds fall all the time. It's sort of why they're in the toddler stage. They toddle, they're like down and up and down. So yeah, they fall, and that's normal. Now, tell me, do kids that are 2, can they climb stairs with alternating feet?
I would think so.
They actually can't. They can't do 2-year-olds with the alternating feet, like one step and then go to the other one, or they just one step and the other one. They can't do that yet. And so inability to climb downstairs with alternating feet is not actually indicative of impairment. It's normal. They don't have that coordination just yet of all of their extremities, which brings us to answer choice A. Do 2-year-olds have super great hand-eye coordination? Like they're good with catching footballs and, sewing and knitting?
No.
No. Okay. So difficulty coordinating hands and eyes is totally normal for 2-year-olds. They literally have only been on this planet for 2 years. That is very normal as far as progression is concerned. As they progress, we see that they get better hand-eye coordination. Once they're in pre-kinder, they're able to do like beads, and it's actually something that we have them do, string beads, string Cheerios and stuff like that, to see where their hand-eye coordination is. So that leaves us with answer choice D. Now let's take a look at answer choice D and assess how we could have known that answer choice D, or how we know answer choice D is the right answer. What words? Please remember, be mindful of the words, even in answer choices.
Hand movements.
What does involuntary mean?
I don't want to say all the time, but it's just something that they do like without
Close. So involuntary, in a good way, it's kind of like a vocabulary lesson, but the voluntary, the root word volun comes from like volunteering, like me waving my hand right now, like I chose to do that. Involuntary means is a spasm. It's like I'm not choosing to make these movements. Involuntary is abnormal. We don't typically make involuntary movements. In fact, the only time we do is if somebody's checking our, reflexes, and then we have like that, there's a reaction. But other than that, we don't make involuntary movements, and they are a sign that something is awry. So involuntary, not their choice. They're not in control. They're not making those hand movements. And a 2-year-old whose hands are, doing whatever by itself, that would be something that would be of grave concern. So remember, this exam, it is a critical reading exam. And so paying attention to the keywords and phrases, to what we know. And you have to think of 2-year-olds, they're practically babies. Many 2-year-olds are not even potty trained yet. I mean, most of them are, but not all of them. I have gone into classes supervising, because I support first-year interns as their supervisor, but I have gone into a pre-K3, pre-K4 campus, and some of the kids are still, and they weren't special ed in diapers at that age. Weren't fully potty trained. So what are your thoughts after breaking it down?
I think it was a good question. I mean, honestly, breaking it down did help. I broke it down a little differently,
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to break it down like me, but I definitely want for you to be mindful of the words and to identify keywords and phrases, to make sure that the little details aren't what get you to choose the wrong answer,
No,
because
yeah. And of course, and if
yeah,
questions you
because
get
it
wrong,
really
that's
is
the
just a matter of like the little details makes one for much of the exam. So let's take a look at number 2. We have a 5th grader has diabetes and manages her illness through insulin injections. Which of the following symptoms should indicate to a teacher that the student may be experiencing insulin shock? So, mindful of the words, soak in the details, analyze it, and give me the keywords and phrases I should highlight. I'll be right back. I'm going to go get another water.
Okay.
All right. So what are you thinking? What are the keywords and phrases I should highlight?
Okay. 5th grader.
For sure.
Diabetes and manage her illness through insulin injections. Symptoms should indicate that the student may be experiencing insulin shock.
Excellent. So we have a 5th grader. She has diabetes, manages her illness herself, which a lot of our students start to do around this particular age. They're
growing up and
they're growing up and they're starting to manage it, especially once they get, it's very common for our diabetic students to have some sort of slip up throughout, through middle school. Because they might take more insulin thinking there's going to be this party, or and then the party doesn't happen, or the pizza didn't get whatever but we have things in place, obviously, in the event if you have a good nurse on your campus, but at this age they start managing it themselves. So it is important, for special ed, but not only regular ed, to know the signs and symptoms, just to be mindful and watch their students. All right, let's take a look at the answer choices and you eliminate them as you see fit.
okay. A trembling and irritability. Ugh. Oh God, where'd it go? A high fever, muscle and joint pain, thirst.
All right, so which do you think you can eliminate? We have trembling and irritability, high fever, muscle and joint pain, and increased level of thirst. So which of these is likely to indicate, and we skipped over the saying what a question is really asking, like which one of these shows us the kid is in insulin shock? That's what they're asking us. Which one of these is a clear indication that the student is experiencing insulin shock? Meaning too much insulin, right? Insulin shock. Are there any you can eliminate? Like that is not a symptom of insulin shock for sure.
Muscle and joint pain.
Right, absolutely. Muscle and joint pain are not a symptom of insulin shock.
I would also say trembling and irritability would be across that it's not a symptom.
Are you sure? You have to be very careful when you're eliminating them, because many times if you eliminate the correct answer choice too quickly, and then you spend, however many seconds or minutes, choosing between the other answer choices, however much time you spend is time spent wasted, because you have 0% chance of getting it correct because you crossed it out. So which one of the, like, would they get a high fever if they went into insulin shock?
No.
No, fever is, typically a sign of sickness or infection in the body, and not a symptom I've ever heard of with insulin shock or diabetes. So that for sure we can throw out and bet ourselves $5 that is not the answer.
Okay.
Now we're left with trembling and irritability, which I superseded your call and kept it on. And D, an increased level of thirst. Let's break down really quickly what insulin does. So knowing what insulin shock is important, but so our diabetic students, their bodies don't create enough, insulin for them to process sugars, and then they'll get really sick, right? And so insulin shock means that they have given themselves too much insulin, and they don't have enough sugars to be broken down. So it's like an overload of insulin, if you will, and no sugars. And so can you know what it's like to be low on sugar and carbs?
Yeah. Tired, irritated.
For sure, irritated.
Yeah.
Let's take a look
Lazy.
at what the state says. So increased thirst isn't even a typical symptom of insulin. So none of the other three. It is that irritability. They're irritable, when you're hungry, and you haven't eaten, like maybe you didn't eat the night before, and then you woke up late. You wake up and your stomach's on fire, and you feel like just irritable and weak or whatever. Like that's what they feel with too much insulin, like worse, trembling, because they don't have any sugars, and it's almost like an overload of like a stimulant, if you will, but it's not a stimulant. It's very strange. But it's important for us to recognize it. And, I was a teacher in a public school for 15, 16 years, give or take a summer. But every campus is different, but most campuses have really good nurses. And in the beginning of the school year, they will hold some sort of professional development, like on one of the days, a meeting, and go over these, especially with like the teachers that are new, just so that everybody can know what to look for. Because especially with our diabetic students, they're going to be special ed students, but you're not going to be with them all the time. Like it's not going to be like the ones that you go in for learning disabilities and you have a group and you're co-teaching with them, right? You're not going to be all the time with your diabetic students. It's really important for and this is just for you when you're on the campus with your special ed students, that you be that person who educates the general ed teachers, because not everybody knows what the symptoms of insulin shock are, and chances are, if you're a public school teacher, you're going to have at least a couple of students who require insulin come through your campus. It's pretty common nowadays. Unfortunately, diabetic insulin, is, excuse me, pediatric diabetes is, higher than ever before. So chances are you're going to have a student that will have this. So when you're on your campus, make sure if you have diabetic students, that you let their teachers know what to look for, what sort of snacks to keep on hand in case they are experiencing insulin shock, because it doesn't say it here, but it might ask you on the exam, like, how do you help a student right away? And having things that are like orange juice, or like just something for the insulin to start to like work down with like lots of sugars, and orange juice has a lot of sugar actually. So it's usually best bet. Candies, but orange juice is best bet. Any questions with that one?
No.
Okay.
I honestly thought that an increased level of thirst was a symptom.
A lot of people have said that to me.
I want to say I read that being a symptom somewhere.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that. In particular, get that. Oh, I think I did this wrong. Get that question wrong and choose high level of thirst, which is interesting. I'm gonna have to look that up and see what that's about. But I always tell my students, my interns, and even my students that were in my classroom, but don't be afraid to make mistakes, especially with me. Like, the best place to like get something wrong is all up in here, because you won't ever get a question concerning diabetes wrong again, right? Or insulin shock. You're going to know that stuff forever. Like I just told you how to go professional develop the other teachers. So you'll be fine. Like, and mistakes are like the magic that needs to happen before success. So why doesn't this go away? All right. So which two of the following characteristics are common to students with both autism spectrum disorder and a hearing impairment? Now, before we dive in, I want to identify keywords and phrases, and like, what is it even asking us? What are the keywords and phrases?
Two.
We want two characteristics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Common
to students with both autism spectrum disorder and hearing impairment.
Oops, sorry, I'm bad with this. Both, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means if one of these answer choices isn't for both, it cannot be the right answer. It has to be exactly what they asked for. So we're looking for two characteristics. That means not just one. There's four, and we're looking for two. Oh wait, no, there's two in each one, right? Which two of the following? Okay, got it. Are common. Okay, so let's take a look at which of the two of the choices that they gave us. So A, displaying social isolation or awkwardness. B, exhibiting difficulty with word endings or quiet speech sounds. C, manifesting difficulty with comprehending contextual or alternative meaning of words. D, engaging in repetitive activities or rituals. I think it's asking which two of the following, but I don't know. I've never seen this question before, so this is a fun new one. So I'm asking myself here, is it asking for us to choose two, or no, it's just one? So which one of these goes for both? Is indicative or common to both those with autistic on the autism spectrum disorder and or have a hearing impairment.
I would take away C.
Right, I would take away C too.
I would also take away D. Okay, this one's a little trick just because of the wording in the answer choices.
Yeah, I know.
Just because I feel like awkwardness isn't the correct vocabulary to use. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I know. Like, it's not
Because I
super.
know like a, a big thing within this section itself is the vocabulary that you use to describe your students or
Yeah, absolutely. The words that we use are really important, but displaying social, I think social isolation, or I think not awkwardness as in like they're awkward, but like awkwardness in social setting.
they don't know how to. I would honestly go with A.
I would too, because I have difficulty. I mean, I know a lot of, I don't
Just
know,
because I know they suffer with
some autistic
social
students don't like
isolation.
loud sounds, and they like,
Yeah.
I mean, my voice is sort of like, you know what I mean, for
The
some of my friends' kids, because I'm loud, and so they prefer quieter. Where hearing impairment, like they can't. Why would they prefer quieter speech sounds? They need you to be speak clearly and sort of, so that's why I was able to eliminate B and bet myself $5. And I also think that A is the correct answer. And let's see how we did. Oh, we were supposed to, you see, it wasn't clear enough. We were supposed to choose two. That's what I was wondering. Or do they want us to choose two? Because social isolation and awkwardness were sort of the same thing, So that is very interesting. They were so tricky with that, because they also gave us this or that, making it tricky for us anyway. So let's just see what they said. Option A and C are correct because displaying social isolation or awkwardness and manifesting difficulty comprehending contextual or alternative meanings of words are both characteristics of students with autism spectrum disorder and students who have a hearing impairment. See, I didn't realize that students with a hearing impairment had difficulty manifesting conceptual, like abstract things, or alternative meanings of words. I didn't know that that was indicative. I'm gonna have to look that up, but I learned something new today. And that's why I could really bet myself $5 that C wasn't the right answer, because I didn't think that that was specifically indicative of hearing impairment, something common, so, I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, it makes sense. If not everybody, I mean, alternative meanings come from social context, from watching TV, from hearing conversations, from, you know what I mean? And if you have difficulty hearing and you've never heard, and you only hear people who speak maybe sign language or speak up with your this, then you're not going to have as much experience and data to go on, and it might make comprehending some things that are socially, you know what I'm saying, difficult to comprehend for hearing impairment. I'm just trying to think of how it would be common for them. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with what you were saying. But yeah, that question was tricky just because they weren't as
Well, because because the reason I thought, because I was asking myself, I'll go back and replay the tape, look at it. But
I think using two and both threw
like
me off.
this here, it's like social display of isolation or awkwardness, discipline, blah, 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 or this. So in each answer choice, they gave us two characteristics, right?
Yeah.
The only thing that had me second guessing myself, and maybe we should choose two, or that we shouldn't choose two, was the fact that sort of, I don't know. Anyway, this one was very tricky. Way to go, Pearson, taking it to the next level with their difficulty. But now a little bit more about common characteristics with hearing impairment, and more importantly, Tatiana, is that for this competency, in order for you to prepare for this particular competency and do better, you have to sort of study some of those things, those common things with hearing impairment, common not disadvantages, but things, common characteristics, common traits that are going to be tied to the specific disability so that you can help them, right? So for the purposes of this section, it's going to be to, for instance, they're just trying to sort of knowledge test you. Do you know what is common for hearing impaired? Do you know what's common for autism? Do you know what's common for insulin shock? Do you know what's traditional and common for a 2-year-old and what's not common? So that's what this section is mostly about. Later, the questions might ask you and say, Miss Sauceda has a student, Roberto, who is hearing impaired. She is an ELAR teacher and is going to be discussing idioms and other things. Which of the following should she do, or like, how could she best prepare? And so you would have to know, okay, they might have difficulty like comprehending idioms because it has to do with alternate meaning of words. Like, oh yeah, they're all that in a bag of chips. Someone learning English for the first time from Japan might not understand what that means, or from Germany or Russia. So too for those in hearing impaired. So for my class, I might have to take a look at whatever it is I'm going to teach and make sure that I provide differentiation of instruction, in particular for Roberto, who's hearing impaired, so that he understands and he doesn't have to go without comprehension. I sort of provide him with concrete examples of these conceptual or alternative meanings for words, so that he has that understanding. And that's how you would apply this knowledge in your special education class. Okay, that was competency 1. And that's the end of the questioning section here, but I certainly want for you to go back and look at those that are in, those listed, chihuahuas, not just in your competencies, like the different concepts, keywords, disorders, disabilities, whatnot, but also that you sort of take a look at this document. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, but it's not good as far as like preparing you like exam questions. It's not going to be like difficult like that, but it does have a lot of background information about the different disabilities, background information about the different struggles that specifically special education teachers need to keep in mind when they're dealing with particular populations within the disabled community, and the extra abled, sort of the gifted and talented, which we also have to provide support for in our special education. So we're closing up on the hour. But were you going to make another session and we do some more competencies, or how was that going to work for the time between now and you taking your exam?
Yes, I want to talk about more about the competencies and get as many questions as I can get in, just because I need more of that one-on-one.
Okay. And tell me again, what date are you taking the exam?
Well, I first have to meet with you and clear things with
Oh,
you.
I haven't opened it for you. Okay. Thank you for reminding me. I'm going to put it right here. So when was the last time you took it?
In December. It's been a while.
Okay. And when tentatively do you want a muscle menos take it? I'm going to stop videoing for us, and then you can, so I can see you, and then we can discuss the next steps or whatever. I'm going to stop the recording.